You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we're going to dive into enterprise-level tech stack rationalization, and even into a little bit of AI as a whole. And so, got a longtime friend of the network, Jon Harding. I don't know, we've been friends, I think, since we pretty much kicked this off, like maybe almost 8 years ago. But I know you were at Conair as CIO for a long time. I don't know if it was, almost 2 decades, probably. But we've been friends for almost half of that, right? And now you're moving on, and we were catching up the other day, and I just thought it'd be great to kind of get your perspective at an enterprise level, because with a lot of the stuff we're doing, it hits small or mid-market, but more recently I've had a lot of enterprise level companies reaching out saying, hey, we need help with everything from vendor negotiations, content creation, whatever it might be. Even if we get bigger onto procurement side, but we can get into those are all other podcasts as a whole. But Jon, I'll kind of kick it over to you. I'd love to hear a little, background on yourself, and then we can kind of jump into this conversation. Sound good?
Yep, sounds good, Aaron. Thanks for inviting me on to the Digital Deep Dive. So I've been in technology for a long time, longer than I'm going to admit to today. So the last 20 years, I've been the global CIO at Conair, which is a consumer products company over big brands, Cuisinart, Scunsi, Babyliss. Now this year, 25, moving into my next chapter of my career. Prior to Conair, I grew up, as it were, at Kellogg's, first in the old country. I guess you can, no one's fooled by my New Jersey accent, even though I've been here 20 years. So yes, in the old country, and then on more of a first pan-European and then sort of global level at Kellogg's, culminating in a few years as the divisional CIO at Kellogg Snacks based in Chicago. So throughout that, I've been in enterprise IT in both public companies. Conair was originally family-owned, and then it became private equity. So I've sort of been in this role in a variety of situations, all of which are interesting, and I think present sometimes slightly different challenges, but overall, as we talk about the evolution of technology, it's very similar. Level of investment might vary a bit, urgency might vary a bit, but overall, it's about trying to make sure nothing becomes totally obsolete, that we're taking advantage as appropriate for business outcome reasons, not technology reasons, business outcome reasons of emerging new technologies. And that's the approach I've always tried to take, is focus on, are we doing this for a business outcome which has got some sort of ROI, rather than we're doing it because it's the latest cool technology. I'll stop there.
Yeah, there's so many threads to pull there. In my time at Perigo, when we were just kicking off e-com, it was a little, I think, considered disruptive to traditional sales. And so I got moved to IT. Right. And wow, was that reporting up through the CIO kind of opened my eyes to everything that needs to take place within the organization, right? That IT is, I think, the most underappreciated, right? Like, you're a cost center and everybody just expects everything to work, everything from the computer to turn on, the keyboard to work, to the ERP system, right, to perform flawlessly. And
achievements, I guess, in the last 20 years is that we had hardly any outages, everything ran. But to your point, that wouldn't be what the rest of the C-suite focused on. It would be, what about this latest cool thing, and what are we going to do about it?
And how do we plug it in? How fast can we plug it in? Is mine at the top of the list, and you're getting requests from sales, from marketing?
By the way, can you fix my gadget?
Yes.
Most CEOs hate those points, by the way. You don't want to be the gadget guy. So yes, so like I say, I agree. I think IT traditionally was very unappreciated, but I think a little bit is if I may be a little controversial, some of it was self-inflicted. This constant talk about IT and the business always, to be honest, it's always set my teeth on edge, because you don't hear finance say finance and the business. You don't hear HR say HR and the business. And I think that as IT practitioners, we do ourselves a big disfavor by perpetuating that myth that we're somehow separate and otherworldly, if you like. I prefer to say IT and the rest of the business. A little bit longer winded, but it at least positions us as part of what's going on, whereas these separate guys in the basement with, maybe some questionable interpersonal skills. But hopefully we're getting beyond that as we move through the 21st century. Obviously, digital and IT should be and is at the core of everything now.
Yeah, right. I mean, it got thrust to the forefront of a lot now, especially at an enterprise level, right? SMB, it's there, but enterprise is just a whole different level of complicated as a whole. And even from onboarding new vendors, vetting out new vendors, onboarding new vendors, especially at the rate that they're popping up. Like, I'd love to walk through like what you've seen from a technology stack evolution just over the past like few years as a whole. I mean, we could go back 15 years if we wanted to, but I think the amount that's changed over the past, just in the past, 3 years is just, it's monumental. And then how should people on the business side think about this new technology stack evolution, and then, pushing that through and getting agreement from IT around either time frame or budgeting or support or launch or execution or all of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally, of course, it's all about change management. So a lot of this is, if you want to use technology to transform, you have to have folks in the room from IT and from the rest of the business, the people who are going to make the changes in supply chain, ways of working, or are going to make changes in accounting in terms of how accounts are set up, etc. People who are going to make the changes in sales to actually use the technology, and perhaps give up some of the spreadsheets. So it's a very, I think those are things that haven't changed. You still need folks who are willing to make the change, who are doing the day-to-day work that's impacted by the new technology. What I think has changed is the speed of this now. There are so many things that could be changed. So I think the role of a CIO now is a lot of gatekeeper. Does this make sense to invest time from both IT and the rest of the business and money into this? Are we going to get a return? Where are we going to apply this new technology initially and get a return? Is it worth it? What are we going to do with the business outcome? Over the years, I've been involved in projects where the project's over, it's gone great, and then you look at it and you're like, the unintended consequence of this efficiency is X. We've now got people working on over there on something else, but was that really, exactly what we intended? Most of the time, fortunately, yes, we get what we intended. We see a real efficiency improvement, which translates into productivity, translates essentially, in many cases, into more revenue, all of which hits EBITDA. And so it's vital that I believe that one understands and gets agreement on what is the business case for us to do this as the technology is coming in. But again, like you say, Aaron, there are so many now, it's a case of picking and choosing where to focus. And,
So I'm behooved as on the brand side. I'm in marketing, I'm in sales. It doesn't matter wherever I'm at, to put together the best possible business case, around, so that when I submit it right to IT, because at the end of the day, I agree. It's not like you have to be the gatekeeper. There's only so many resources, and there's not a lot of companies that want to staff up in IT. And so as you become the gatekeeper, then you are looking for the best business cases that are putting out there to have either impacting profitability, productivity, EBITDA, whatever it might be. So as I back into this, and I'm just rolling this, from I have my business hat back on to running a division. Where is the company's outcomes, right? Is it a retrade if you're owned by PE, right? Is it, you're trading in the public sector, you want increased, profits, EBITDA, whatever it might be, and aligning my case around what I'm doing and how it's going to impact the overall goals of the business through what I'm doing.
I would say yes. I would submit, though, that part of the paradox of being in IT, and particularly at the CIO level, is a lot of these ideas we can come with from the CIO office, if you like. And I've done that in the past, particularly with marketing, approach people and say, well, I think, there's a technology here we could use to help you, but I'm happy to help you provide funding, and I'm happy to provide some project management, but it's collaborative. So I think it's important that rather than one group coming with something all written down and it's all beautifully laid out in PowerPoint, I think it's important to collaborate first and produce it together. I think if that's the sort of, to me, that's the true north, as it were. If you can focus on coming up with this together, because that creates a lot more ownership across all stakeholders, and it also ensures that everybody's point of view is taken into account. Like, for example, is it worth you in a marketing group spending 2 months preparing a beautiful PowerPoint about here's how we should change this particular situation using technology, if actually the technology isn't really ready, or it's not compatible with what we've already got? I mean, as we talk about tech stack evolution, I think the number one thing that in my mind gets overlooked is that people leading technology are making decisions all the time in collaboration with the rest of the business to change the tech stack. But when you've made one of those decisions, you need to live with it for a while. You can't keep changing the same thing year after year after year. You need to give it, not least of which, because a lot of these SaaS contracts are 3 years, minimum 3 years. I always try and stick to 3, but sometimes some people push for 5. So if you've made a decision, rightly or wrongly, on the facts available at the time, you need to live with that decision. The same with more legacy technology, which maybe was bought as a perpetual license years ago. You can't keep changing everything. There isn't the bandwidth, and I would submit that the organization isn't ready for that level of constant change. It creates chaos if you're not careful. So you you make a decision at a point in time with the facts available at the time and try and pick the best technology at that point. But I think, as we all know, technology leapfrogs all the time. So the vendor you selected last month probably hasn't got the coolest thing this month, but that's not a reason to revisit it. So I think a lot of the tech stack evolution, that I like the word evolution because that's something that happens slower over time. It's not meant to be a gating factor, but it sort of is. You're beholden, as it were, you're hostage to the decisions you've already made, the technology you already have. So I think that's an important point that often gets lost, quite understandably, in the world of IT consulting and the world of IT vendors and VCs and startups. Is even if you have, Aaron, the absolute best thing this month, I would bet you that 6 months from now it won't be the absolute best thing. So if somebody buys it now, well, they've made the right decision, but it's a decision for a few years.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point, which is, it could be the best decision right now, right? Yeah. With all the available data. And so that is forward looking, where you can feel good about it. I've made the right decision, but also 6 months later, you can't go back and keep rehashing it. But if you have a new group coming in saying, hey, why did you choose that? That's all the information we had at the time. And so it also gets to the point of, I'm a big proponent of, I don't know, teamwork as a whole, and blending is, a lot of times people will come in and make judgments based on the technology that's there and why you would take it. Well, that's the best decision at that point in time. And it could even be a budget. And it's the old, better, not best. better, not best. This is better than what we have. It might not be the best right now, but it's better than what we had. Are you seeing? Oh, go ahead.
No, I'd say so. You make the decision on what fits that point in time in terms of budget, in terms of resource availability, and critically in terms of compatibility to what you've already got, and the level of risk that the organization's willing to take in terms of the amount of change, and also exposing to cyber risk and compliance risk and so
on. I want to jump into then, because the speed of change is happening faster than ever with AI. So how have you been looking at AI? Because the number of tools that are coming out now, it's just faster. There's more, faster.
yeah.
And it's not slowing down. If anything, it's actually going to get faster than it is right now. Like, how did you kind of handle this rise of AI over the past few years?
Right. So, well, a couple of things. You do need to get in place some, classic basic governance of people can do this with AI. We don't want them to do that. That's a collaboration principally between technology, legal, HR. So while you're getting those governance in place, I certainly didn't start an excessive number of pilots and POCs. Instead, try to focus on what are some really good use cases where we can see a return. Perhaps not in the first 6 to 12 months, but we'll see a return. And these are in the classic use cases, if you like, in consumer products. One of them revolves around consumer experience. So in the case of Conair, there's a lot of folks call in post-purchase with questions about the product, whether it's Cuisinart or whether it's Conair, or are calling about, after they've had it for a while, these things last, as we know, they're great products, high quality, they last, but maybe they've broken an accessory, they've broken the carafe on the coffee maker, etc. They need help where to get that. So all of those kind of questions traditionally go into a voice call center. The call center at certain times, obviously, they all do, gets overloaded. We all hate the queue. You'll call to be answered in the order in which it's received, etc. So in the case 18 months ago, we were in a position where we signed up for a Gen AI chatbot because that had the value that it would improve consumer experience if it could answer their questions without having to wait for an agent, and because the agent's a third party, every call has $1 cost. So there was a potential cost saving as well in avoiding actual calls. So that to me was a great use case, and working closely in collaboration with the head of consumer services in the States, we implemented that. I will say it's like many new technologies, it takes time to get it right. And in the case of AI, it's the training of the tool, if you like, to answer the correct questions correctly. Luckily, because it was a contained thing talking about a database essentially of knowledge about the products, that was our database. It was a scope thing, so it was training it on that. So that was one common use case that we were able to address. Another very common on consumer products is about digital content creation, right? And we are all subject to this insatiable demand for digital content, whether it's for retailer.com websites, amazon.com, wayfair.com, walmart.com, target.com, etc., or it's your own direct consumer websites. We all know you need content. You've got a lot of new SKU turnover, you've got to have a lot of content. Even if it's SKU that's been out there for 10 years, you need to refresh that content, whether it's video, whether it's copy, whether it's text, whatever. So the creation of that text, especially the copywriting, is a very cumbersome process traditionally, often with another one with a backlog. So by using content, text creating AI, Gen AI, to create at least a first version of copy, that has definitely, again, shown a return in terms of improving the speed at which content is created. Which in turn improves the relationship with the retail partners and also ultimately drives revenue for them and us. So that's another classic case. So really picking out those use cases and focusing on those rather than saying, well, everybody in the organization could use AI. Let's launch 200 proofs of concept. Let's focus on a few things. Let's also let people experiment with co-pilots, but let's be judicious and not spend the money on everybody having co-pilot. Let's just give it out only to the people who come and ask and appear to have, some ideas that make sense at a simple level, not a well thought through justification, but some level of justification. Because Copilot sounds cheap, right? At $30 a month a user, but then when you add it up across thousands of users, buying it for everybody is not suddenly becomes a big ongoing expense, and you start questioning, well, what are we getting for that? I think the other aspect of it has been waiting for the existing technology vendors to get their product embedded, to get their embedded AI finished working, etc. So, for example, websites hosted on Salesforce Commerce Cloud have the ability to use Einstein and improve aspects of the recommendation engine using the AI that's embedded in the product rather than, in that case, having to buy an add-on product.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about the technology vendors, yeah, there's two things that seem to be going on right now. There's the current incumbents, and this is getting back to the statement you made, like 6 months from now, it might be somebody totally new. So there's a lot of the best in class tech vendors that are out there right now have a lot of rules-based, we'll say AI, but I don't know if it's really AI, but they're rules-based platforms. And they're putting AI and machine learning on top of that. And it's enhancing what that's able to do. But this next generation of service and tech providers that's coming out, they're AI and ML at the core. And so it's not laid on top of use these rules to find the best answer. It is find the best answer. And so we're just starting to creep into that phase, like right now. So it's going to be very interesting. Some the advice I kind of have is, normally stay with who you currently have and watch what they're doing, but always have your pulse on the new things that are coming out, because at some point in time, the current tech stack will be obsolete. It will be. Everything's changing too fast at this point in time. How do you handle like change within the organization? Like, it's like, in my mind, you'd almost have to constantly be a cheerleader for it and remind people to the benefits of it, because it seems like at our core, most people don't like change.
Absolutely right. People don't like change for sure. And yeah, it is, as you say, the speed of change. Tech vendors are, just using Microsoft products. Windows 11, rightly or wrongly, looks different than Windows 10. You have to learn that. So, it's hopefully a speed bump as you're doing your daily work as a knowledge worker. Those are sort of unavoidable for security, compliance, and compatibility reasons. I think you're right that there's talking to people about change, and the fundamental is, why are we doing this? And having a collaborative situation at the C-suite level where it's not IT and the CIO saying, this is why we're changing it. We're, as it were, stood behind someone who's an executive sponsor, preferably more than one, who cover the various and have leadership responsibilities and authority within the functions that are changing. So getting those senior level stakeholders aligned is usually relatively easy at the start, but it's keeping them engaged throughout the initiative that I find is the challenge. And it's a lot of casual talks as well, drive by people's offices, as well as the formal steering type meetings where they're listened to an update. And I think the other aspect of this that I always focus on in any kind of status or steering meeting is, let's talk about what's not going right. Let's not talk about all the things that have gone really well with the project. let's talk about what are the issues currently. Because I think by being transparent about those, it builds trust and engagement of the other executives. If all of us would, it's easy to sit in a meeting and listen to, we did this, we did that, we did this, and their results were what we expected. Well, I mean, that's like check the box type stuff, but it's much more interesting to hear, well, actually, there's an issue with this aspect of the process. We need to decide, are we going to change it or not? That's when I think you get more engagement and definitely much more buy-in at the senior level to the change, because there's a feeling that this is not just being done to them, they're part of driving the change. And also they know what's going on. They've not got members of their departments who are in the project team coming and saying, hey, by the way, do you know that this has all gone wrong? And so on. So it's very important, I think, at any kind of status meeting to make sure you talk about openly about what's not gone right, or what it looks like in the short term we're going to have a problem with. Because that, in my experience, if you don't do that, in my experience, that's when you lose executive support in the other functions involved in the change or transformation.
Yeah. Awesome. Any questions you have for me? I've been picking your brain for a while. This is awesome, especially throw back to my, my days at Perigo sitting in the IT department. Like, I love what you're doing. It's awesome. But I know I've been picking your brain for a while. Any questions you have for me?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, Aaron, you talk to a vast number of folks across the industry, consumer products, retail, frequently with your focus on e-com. What are you excited about in 2025 that could practically change what's going on?
I am excited about the cost of doing business coming down for brands. That I think about, just a couple previous people had on the podcast, right? Like a Max at eContent. I mean, he is kicking out. So he spent 2 years training a model to build detail pages for brands. Right. And he's like, hey, he starts at, I don't know if it's 200 or 500 bucks a month, but it gets the cost for content development. And again, it doesn't always get you all the way there, but it might get you 95% of the way there. You think about images, video, text, optimized for A9 algorithm and Rufus. Like that cost is 20, 50 bucks an ASIN instead of 15, right? If you look at this new tech, I mean, what Spencer is doing over at Detail Page, what Andy Berger and Justin Lay was just on a couple episodes ago that we're doing at Workflow Labs to automate the back end. What Zach is doing, like all at Sigil, like there's all this new tech where it's really dropping the cost with the machine learning and the AI in the back end of what used to cost, $12,000-$15,000 a month. We're getting for under $1,500, under $1,000 a month. And that's one of the biggest struggles is overall profitability in e-commerce, right? It just is. It's expensive, especially on the direct to consumer side. If you don't have a product in that basket, I should say, it doesn't have to be a product. That basket isn't over $40 now. You're not making money. You just can't. And so, I love to help people solve problems, but I'm an advisor. I'm not coming in to run their business. So I love connecting them with people who can. And finally, we're there with people who can do a phenomenal job for low cost and really fit in a lot easier. And so this tech stack piece is, I think it's going to get easier and yet harder for like CIOs, because the business cases are going to, over the next year and a half, and there will be, you get to land at diminishing returns, but the business cases are going to be so significant and the cost savings are going to be so big. You almost can't afford not to implement multiple where you normally would say no, but think about generating, if you've got 1,000 SKUs and for, I don't know, $1,000 a month, being able to plug something in that generates it all. Like everything you needed, Walmart, Target, Amazon, direct to consumer. That's where we're getting to. Like you can almost not afford to plug it in. Right. So anyways, that's what gets me excited is the cost is going to get a lot lower over the next 12 to 18 months to run digital. And digital is my passion, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I love.
Good. Yeah. No, it's exciting stuff. I agree. It's going to be great. I mean, there's no doubt if we can get all of this done at a much lower cost, it's going to be so much easier. And also, it's going to be easy to iterate so much more and have fresh content, which is, I think we all believe is critical to drive revenue going forward. Yeah. Very cool. Thanks for
absolutely. And I think what gets you excited, and then we're gonna wrap up this episode. What are you excited for?
Yeah,
What's the next chapter in life for you? What's the next chapter in life?
So I'm excited to find the next organization I can really make an impact on, as I did before, while at the same time excited to do advisory stuff with a bunch of tech vendors. I think there's a lot of bridging the gap, as it were, between enterprise IT teams and vendors like some of the folks you mentioned, I'm sure, are unfamiliar names to the likes of me. And so how do you figure out who to trust and what to trust? And I think there's a lot of hard-won learnings I'm eager to share in my next chapter.
No, that's right. The enterprise is a different sale, isn't it? It's a different sale.
Absolutely.
Right? And everybody's trying to go upstream, right? Start at SMB and then go upstream. So, I mean, we're going to have 100 conversations still, John. So
yeah, that would be a long conversation about that. Yes. But yeah, those are the kind of learnings I'm hoping to, I'm aiming to leverage in my next chapter.
Yeah. Well, awesome, John. Well, thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for being such a great friend, support of the network for so long. And I mean, with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks, everybody, for listening in.